Have you ever been in a conversation where no matter what you said, it felt like the other person was determined to misunderstand or oppose you? Maybe they twisted your words, bombarded you with rapid-fire questions, or dismissed your ideas before you even had a chance to explain. It's frustrating, isn't it? These moments can make you feel cornered, defensive, or even powerless. In situations like these, our natural instinct is often to fight back, to raise our voice, prove our point, or make the other person see things our way. But what if there's a better approach? What if, instead of escalating the tension, you could diffuse it? Instead of reacting emotionally, you could respond with wisdom, grace, and control. That's where Stoic philosophy comes in. The ancient Stoics believed that we can't always control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond. Their teachings provide us with timeless strategies for navigating conflicts, calming heated conversations, and fostering mutual understanding, even in the most challenging circumstances. Imagine this. Instead of being drawn into arguments or debates, you remain calm and collected. Instead of feeling powerless against verbal attacks, you respond with clarity and strength. You diffuse hostility without sacrificing your dignity, and you guide the conversation toward respect and collaboration. In today's video, we're going to explore 6 transformative techniques inspired by Stoic philosophy that will show you how to handle conflicts with composure, communicate effectively, and build stronger connections, even when emotions are running high. You'll learn how to recognize hidden assumptions in questions and comments, handle verbal traps designed to distort your words, stay grounded when overwhelmed by rapid-fire questions, respect the truth without resorting to misrepresentation, use vivid imagery to communicate your message with impact, gently reveal common ground with those who seem to oppose you. By the end of this video, you'll not only have practical tools to handle difficult conversations, but you'll also gain a mindset that allows you to protect your inner peace while strengthening your relationships. So, think back to a time when you felt cornered, misunderstood, or caught off guard in a conversation. What if, in that moment, you could have remained calm, confident, and composed? What if you could have steered the dialogue toward a better outcome without sacrificing your values or your peace of mind? These techniques aren't just about avoiding conflict, they're about transforming it. With practice, you'll find that even the toughest conversations can become opportunities for growth, understanding, and connection. Let's dive in and discover the power of Stoic communication. Number 1. Recognize hidden assumptions. Have you ever been in a conversation where a simple question didn't feel so simple? The words might have sounded neutral, but beneath the surface there was a hidden implication, something unspoken, but very much intended to influence your response. These hidden assumptions are subtle traps that can corner you into defending yourself or agreeing to a perspective you don't actually share. Stoicism teaches us to approach such moments with clarity and control. Instead of reacting impulsively, take a step back, recognize the hidden assumptions, and respond in a way that dismantles them without unnecessary conflict. The subtle trap of hidden assumptions. I remember being in an important work meeting where a colleague asked me, "Do we really want to pursue an idea that most people are clearly against?" At first glance, it seemed like a straightforward question, but underneath it carried a subtle yet powerful assumption that the idea I was advocating lacked support. If I had reacted defensively or rushed to answer, I might have accidentally validated their premise, reinforcing the false narrative. Instead, I paused, composed myself, and responded, "I wasn't aware this approach was widely opposed. Has anyone shared concerns I might not have heard yet?" This reply not only dismantled the assumption, but also shifted the focus back to an open discussion. As the conversation unfolded, it turned out that my idea had far more support than my colleague had implied. Hidden assumptions in personal relationships. These traps don't just appear in professional settings, they can be just as common in personal relationships. For example, an old friend once asked me, "Do you still cling to those odd ideas you used to have?" The question was loaded with judgment, suggesting that my beliefs were eccentric or unreasonable. Reacting defensively could have turned the conversation into an argument, but I chose to approach it calmly. I smiled and said, "It seems you find those ideas unusual. I'd love to hear why you feel that way." This response diffused the tension and opened the door to a meaningful discussion. As we talked, I realized their perception wasn't about my beliefs being odd, but simply different from their own worldview. By refusing to take the bait, I was able to preserve my composure and guide the conversation toward mutual understanding. How to recognize and address hidden assumptions. Hidden assumptions often come disguised as innocent questions or comments. They aim to influence how you respond, sometimes without you even realizing it. Here's how to handle them. Stoically. Pause before responding. Don't rush to answer. Take a moment to assess whether the question contains any implied judgments or biases. Reframe the question. If you identify an assumption, respond in a way that challenges it without escalating the tension. For instance, if someone asks, "Why do you waste so much time on that hobby?" you might say, "I don't see it as a waste. For me, it's a way to recharge and find joy. What do you do to unwind?" Invite dialogue. Instead of becoming defensive, ask for their perspective. This shifts the focus from accusations to understanding. Stay grounded in your beliefs. Don't let the hidden assumption force you into defending something that doesn't need defending. Stand firm in your values while remaining calm and respectful. Family scenarios and hidden assumptions. Imagine being at a family dinner and a relative says, "Do you really think you're smarter than everyone else here?" It's an obvious attempt to provoke. A defensive reaction might escalate the tension, but a stoic response could be, "I don't think that at all. I value everyone's input and would love to hear your thoughts on this topic." This response dismantles the assumption, maintains your composure, and redirects the conversation toward collaboration. The Stoic wisdom of recognizing assumptions. Hidden assumptions often reveal more about the person asking the question than the person being questioned. Stoicism teaches us to stay calm and detached, understanding that we cannot control others' intentions, but we can control our response. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." By responding thoughtfully, you avoid falling into verbal traps and protect your peace of mind. Practical example. Let's say you're talking to a coworker about a project and they ask, "Why are you so insistent on doing it your way?" Instead of defending yourself, you could respond, "I'm not insistent on doing it my way. I just think this approach could work well. I'd love to hear if you have other ideas we could explore." This response addresses the assumption without escalating the situation, creating space for collaboration. Why it matters. Recognizing hidden assumptions isn't about winning the conversation. It's about staying true to yourself while fostering an environment of mutual respect. By approaching these moments with clarity and grace, you not only protect your inner peace, but also encourage more meaningful dialogue. As Epictetus wisely said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you respond to it that matters." When faced with hidden assumptions, pause, reflect, and respond thoughtfully. In doing so, you demonstrate the strength and wisdom of a true Stoic. Would you like additional examples or refinements? Number 2. Escape the trap of distorted words. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where your words were twisted or exaggerated into something you never intended? These moments can be incredibly frustrating and disorienting. What started as a simple statement suddenly becomes a point of contention, leaving you feeling cornered, misunderstood, or even unfairly accused. These traps often come in the form of distorted interpretations, where someone takes your words, bends them out of context, and uses them to create an argument against you. Whether intentional or accidental, these situations can provoke emotional reactions, leading to unnecessary conflict. But Stoicism teaches us a better way: clarity, calmness, and control. I recall a time during a work meeting when a colleague, known for their enthusiasm for innovation, suggested a new approach to streamline processes. Their exact words were, "I think we could make some improvements to how we handle these tasks for better efficiency." Another colleague, resistant to change, immediately responded, "So you're saying everything we're doing now is ineffective?" This was a clear misrepresentation of the original statement, designed to provoke a defensive response. Instead of falling into the trap, the first colleague took a deep breath, paused, and replied calmly, "I'm not saying everything is ineffective. I'm simply suggesting that we can enhance a few areas to improve our overall workflow. What are your thoughts on that?" This response not only clarified the original intention, but also highlighted the absurdity of the misrepresentation, leaving no room for further distortion. The discussion then shifted back to a constructive tone. These traps aren't limited to professional settings. They can appear in personal conversations too. I remember a discussion between two friends where one was sharing a perspective on a sensitive social issue. Midway through their explanation, the other friend interrupted with a sarcastic remark. "So you're saying anyone who disagrees with you is just ignorant?" Instead of reacting emotionally or defensively, the first friend smiled and replied, "I don't think that at all. I'd like to hear your perspective so we can better understand each other." This approach not only diffused the tension, but also invited a meaningful and respectful discussion. Stoicism emphasizes that the key to escaping the trap of distorted words lies in your ability to separate yourself from emotional reactions and respond with precision. When someone twists your words, resist the urge to retaliate in kind. Instead, calmly clarify your position, redirect the conversation to its original purpose, and avoid escalating the situation further. Imagine being at a family gathering and a relative suddenly remarks, "Why do you always think you're better than everyone else?" This accusatory statement could easily trigger anger or defensiveness. However, a Stoic response might look like this: "I don't think I'm better than anyone. Is there something I've said or done that made you feel that way?" This reply does three important things. It clarifies your position without being defensive. It invites understanding by asking a sincere question. It steers the conversation away from hostility and toward a constructive dialogue. Stoicism reminds us that when we react impulsively to distorted words, we allow others to control our emotions. By staying composed, we take back that control and shift the power dynamics in our favor. If someone deliberately twists your words, remember that their actions are a reflection of their mindset, not yours. You are not obligated to engage with their negativity. Instead, respond with calm clarity, like a steady anchor in a stormy sea. As Epictetus said, "When you are offended at someone's words, it is not they who disturb you, but your own judgment of those words." By mastering this principle, you can navigate even the trickiest conversations with grace and strength. In every situation, ask yourself, What is the true goal of this conversation? Is it worth engaging emotionally, or can I steer this toward mutual understanding? When faced with distortion, stay grounded, be clear, concise, and compassionate. By doing so, you protect your inner peace and encourage others to engage in honest and meaningful communication. Would you like additional examples or further adjustments to this section? Number 3. Handle the storm of questions. Have you ever been in a conversation where someone bombarded you with a series of loaded or rapid-fire questions, each designed to corner you or force you into a defensive position? These moments can feel overwhelming, leaving you scrambling for answers and questioning how the conversation escalated so quickly. Storms of questions often contain subtle assumptions, judgments, or exaggerations. Their goal is not always to seek clarity, but to pressure you into agreeing, defending, or conceding ground. However, Stoicism teaches us that our greatest strength in these situations lies in staying calm, pausing to analyze, and responding with clarity, not haste. I remember a family gathering where a relative, known for their candid remarks, posed a question loaded with judgment. Do you really think spending so much time on those books is the best way to live your life? On the surface, it might sound like a genuine inquiry, but the underlying implication was clear. They believed my reading habits were unproductive or wasteful. A quick response could have easily put me on the defensive, leading to an unnecessary argument about the value of reading. Instead, I chose to pause and respond calmly. I believe everyone finds value in life in their own way. For me, books offer perspectives I can't find elsewhere. What do you find most meaningful in how you spend your time? This reply not only diffused the tension, but also shifted the conversation into a space of mutual exploration. By showing respect for their perspective and inviting them to share more, I maintained control of the dialogue without succumbing to their assumptions. These storms of questions aren't confined to family settings. They can arise in professional and social contexts as well. A friend once shared an experience where a colleague questioned her work ethic in a meeting by asking, "Don't you think that spending so much time on one project is inefficient? Shouldn't you focus on the bigger picture instead of getting bogged down in details?" The questions were rapid, pointed, and clearly intended to provoke doubt. Instead of reacting defensively, she paused, smiled, and replied, "I see your point, and I appreciate your concern. I've found that attention to detail in the early stages often helps the bigger picture come together more smoothly." What's your take on balancing these two priorities? This response not only addressed the questions, but also subtly shifted the responsibility of explanation back to the other person, neutralizing their attempt to corner her. The Stoic strategy for handling question storms. Stoicism emphasizes that it's not the question itself, but how we respond that defines our strength. Here's how to handle such moments effectively. Pause before you respond. When you're hit with a series of questions, resist the urge to answer immediately. Take a deep breath, pause, and assess the intent behind the questions. Are they genuine inquiries, or do they carry assumptions designed to provoke? Dissect and reframe the question. If a question feels loaded or unfair, break it down and address only the part that is reasonable. For instance, if someone asks, "Don't you think focusing on this hobby is a waste of time when there are more important things to do?" A Stoic might respond, "I believe every hobby brings value in its own way. It helps me recharge and find joy, which ultimately makes me more productive." How do you unwind and find balance? Shift the perspective with questions. Redirect the conversation by asking questions that encourage the other person to explain their stance. This takes the pressure off you and fosters mutual understanding. Stay grounded in your beliefs. Avoid being pressured into agreeing with assumptions you don't align with. Maintain your composure, stand firm in your values, and respond with confidence. A practical example. Let's say you're at work and a colleague asks, "Why are you spending so much time on this task? Don't you think it's better to focus on something more urgent?" Instead of reacting defensively, you could respond, "This task is critical to achieving our larger goals, and I want to ensure it's done well. If there's something more urgent, I'd be happy to discuss priorities and adjust accordingly." What are your thoughts? This reply not only clarifies your intention, but also redirects the conversation toward collaboration rather than criticism. The power of pausing and reflecting. When faced with storms of questions, remember that you're not obligated to answer them all, especially if they're designed to overwhelm or provoke. By pausing, reframing, and responding thoughtfully, you demonstrate emotional resilience and intellectual clarity. As Epictetus reminds us, it's not the questions themselves that trouble us, but how we choose to respond to them. Number 4, respect the truth and avoid creating a straw man. Have you ever been in a discussion where someone completely distorted your point of view, turning it into something you never said or intended? This tactic, often referred to as creating a straw man, can feel deeply frustrating. Instead of engaging with your actual argument, the other person misrepresents your position, making it easier for them to criticize or dismiss. These moments test our patience and emotional resilience. The temptation to retaliate by distorting their words in return can be strong. However, Stoicism reminds us that real strength lies not in tearing others down, but in staying composed, clarifying the truth, and maintaining our integrity. Avoiding the trap of strawman arguments. I once witnessed an example of this at a book club meeting. A member shared their opinion about a novel, saying, "I think the protagonist is genuinely selfish in how she treats the people around her." Immediately, another member responded, "So, you're saying she's a horrible person and doesn't deserve any sympathy?" This reply twisted the original statement into an exaggerated and false interpretation. Instead of reacting defensively, the first member stayed calm and replied, "No, I'm not saying she's entirely horrible. I just noticed that some of her actions could come across as selfish. But I understand everyone might interpret her differently. What's your perspective?" This thoughtful response not only clarified their stance, but also shifted the conversation back to a respectful and constructive tone, reducing the tension in the room. Stoicism teaches us that when others distort our words, we should respond with clarity and composure. Retaliating with similar misrepresentations only escalates the conflict and undermines the possibility of meaningful dialogue. Responding with integrity. Imagine being at a family gathering and a relative says, "Why do you always think you're better than everyone else?" This accusatory statement is a classic example of a straw man argument. It implies an arrogance that you may not have expressed at all. Instead of becoming defensive or angry, a stoic response might look like this: "I don't think I'm better than anyone. Is there something about how I've acted that made you feel that way?" This approach achieves several things. It diffuses the tension by addressing the emotion behind their statement. It clarifies your position without escalating the conflict. It opens the door for a more productive conversation by showing a willingness to listen. By refusing to engage in distortion yourself, you maintain your integrity and demonstrate a commitment to truth. Maintaining truth in arguments. When others twist our words, it's easy to feel tempted to fight fire with fire. But Stoicism reminds us that this only adds fuel to the flames. Instead, focus on respecting the truth, even if the other person doesn't extend the same courtesy. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. By staying truthful and composed, you not only protect your own dignity, but also set a powerful example for others. Practical application. Let's say you're discussing a work issue and a colleague says, "So what you're saying is you think everyone's ideas but yours are useless." A Stoic might respond, "That's not what I meant at all. I think everyone's ideas have value. I'm simply suggesting that this particular approach might work better for the project. What's your take on it?" This calm response not only corrects the misrepresentation, but also shifts the conversation toward collaboration. Or imagine you're talking about a charitable initiative and someone says, "Are you implying that people who don't support this are selfish?" Instead of reacting defensively, you might reply, "Not at all. I think everyone has their own priorities and ways of contributing. My goal here is simply to share why I'm passionate about this cause. What's your perspective?" By clarifying your stance and inviting their input, you avoid unnecessary conflict and demonstrate respect for their viewpoint. The Stoic path: truth over ego. In every conversation, ask yourself, what is my ultimate goal here? Is it to win the argument, or is it to uphold truth and understanding? Stoics value truth above ego. Even if someone else distorts your words, you can rise above by staying true to your beliefs and engaging with respect. Epictetus said it best, "It's not what happens to you, but how you respond to it that matters." When faced with a straw man argument, remember, stay calm. Don't let emotions dictate your response. Clarify your position. Correct the distortion with clear, concise language. Invite understanding. Shift the focus back to constructive dialogue. By handling these situations with wisdom and grace, you protect your inner peace while fostering a more respectful and meaningful conversation. Number 5. Use visual imagery to convey a deep message. Have you ever been in a conversation where no matter how logically you explained your point, it didn't seem to connect? Sometimes it's not about what we say, but how we say it. Stoicism teaches us that words, when used wisely, can transcend logic. They can touch the heart and open minds. One of the most powerful ways to do this is by using visual imagery to convey complex ideas in a simple, relatable way. Words wielded like blades often divide, but words wrapped in vivid imagery have the power to unite, evoke empathy, and foster understanding. Imagery is not about winning a debate or proving who is right. Instead, it's about creating a bridge that invites others to see the world from a different perspective. The power of a metaphor. I once witnessed a moment in a park that perfectly illustrates this. A father was loudly scolding his young son for accidentally spilling a bottle of water. The boy stood frozen, his eyes filled with fear and shame, while the father's face burned with frustration. His words were sharp, repeating over and over, "You need to be more careful." As I walked by, I felt compelled to step in gently. I approached and said to the father, "You know, anger is like a stirred-up pond. The more you stir, the murkier it gets. But if you let it settle, everything becomes clear." The father paused, exhaled deeply, and looked at his son with softened eyes. He sat down beside the boy and began speaking in a calmer tone. It was a small interaction, but the shift was profound. This simple metaphor didn't impose a viewpoint or criticize, it guided the father toward reflection. By painting a picture, the message became relatable, tangible, and harder to dismiss. Why imagery works. Using visual imagery helps people connect ideas to their own experiences. It transforms abstract concepts into something concrete, making them easier to understand and internalize. For example, if someone is angry and lashing out at a situation they can't control, you might say, "Your anger is like a fire. If left unchecked, it can burn everything around you, but if controlled, it can become the energy that lights the way forward. Such words don't attack. They offer a gentle path to introspection. The person isn't forced to defend themselves, but is instead invited to reconsider their approach. Imagery in action. Here's another example. Imagine a friend criticizing your calm demeanor in a heated debate, accusing you of not caring enough. Instead of reacting defensively, you could respond, "You know, words are like mirrors. They reflect what we bring into the conversation. If you see calmness, it's because I'm trying to bring peace. What do you see in your reflection?" This metaphor not only clarifies your stance, but also gently encourages the other person to assess their own behavior without feeling attacked. Or consider a coworker who dismisses your suggestion saying, "That idea is completely unrealistic." You might respond with, "Every great idea starts as a seed. It takes time, patience, and the right environment to grow into something remarkable. Maybe we just need to nurture it a bit before dismissing it." This response shifts the focus from conflict to possibility, fostering collaboration instead of division. Communicating through stories' imagery doesn't always have to come in the form of metaphors. Telling a brief, impactful story can also deliver a message powerfully. Sharing relatable anecdotes allows others to see your point through a lens of shared humanity. For example, if someone feels stuck or overwhelmed by failure, you might tell them, "There was a time when I planted a tree in my backyard. It didn't grow at first, and I thought I had done something wrong. But over time, I realized the roots were growing deep, preparing to support its future height." Sometimes setbacks aren't failures, they're the foundation for something stronger. This story communicates resilience and patience without lecturing. The Stoic approach to visual communication, Stoicism, emphasizes that communication isn't about overpowering others, it's about connecting. When we use imagery, metaphors, and stories, we transform arguments into opportunities for shared understanding. Here's how to practice this effectively. Stay calm and observant. Look for the emotional tone of the conversation and respond thoughtfully rather than impulsively. Choose relatable imagery. Use examples from nature, daily life, or shared experiences to make your point clear and relatable. Focus on empathy. Ensure your words aim to build understanding, not to attack or provoke. Invite reflection. Frame your imagery or story in a way that encourages the other person to reflect on their perspective without feeling judged. Practical example. Imagine someone accuses you of being too optimistic, saying, "You're always acting like everything will work out, but life doesn't work that way." Instead of defending your outlook, you might say, "Optimism is like planting seeds. You don't know which ones will grow, but if you don't plant any, you're guaranteed to have no harvest." For me, it's about giving life a chance. What's your approach? This metaphor not only explains your perspective, but also opens the door for a more meaningful discussion. Why it matters. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." Our words have the power to shape others' thoughts and emotions. By choosing imagery that inspires reflection and empathy, we ensure our communication leaves a lasting, positive impact. Remember, your goal isn't to win an argument, it's to create a space for mutual understanding, even in the face of conflict. When you choose to use visual imagery, you bring clarity, calmness, and compassion to your conversations, hallmarks of a truly Stoic approach. Would you like additional examples or refinements? Number 6. Reveal that they've already agreed with you. Have you ever been in a conversation where it felt like the other person was determined to oppose you, no matter what you said? It's easy to get caught up in trying to defend your point, or persuade them to see things your way. But what if there's a more effective way to approach such situations? Stoicism offers a subtle and powerful tool. Instead of arguing or dominating the conversation, guide the other person to see that, deep down, they may already share your perspective. By revealing shared values or common goals, you can dissolve tension, foster mutual understanding, and create a foundation for meaningful dialogue. The power of listening for common ground. Stoic philosophy emphasizes the importance of listening, not just to the words spoken, but to the underlying motivations and values behind them. As Epictetus said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." By listening closely, you can often uncover shared priorities or principles that align with your perspective. Instead of focusing on differences, you can highlight these similarities to build a bridge of understanding. Finding agreement in action. I remember a time when I was new to a community and attended a neighborhood meeting. During the discussion, a neighbor voiced frustration about the waste management system, saying, "This system is way too complicated and inconvenient. It's a complete mess." At first, it seemed like they were simply being critical. But instead of reacting defensively, I listened carefully and realized their frustration stemmed from a genuine desire to keep our neighborhood clean and sustainable. I responded calmly, "It sounds like we both care deeply about maintaining a clean and eco-friendly neighborhood. Maybe we can work together to suggest improvements that make the system easier for everyone." That small acknowledgement of shared values immediately dissolved the tension. The conversation shifted from criticism to collaboration, and we ended up brainstorming solutions together. Guiding with gentle questions. One of the best ways to reveal agreement is by asking thoughtful questions that encourage reflection. Imagine a longtime friend opposes your idea to support a new charitable initiative. Instead of defending your position, you might ask, "Do you think your concerns come from wanting to preserve values we both respect?" This question subtly highlights the shared foundation of your perspectives without directly challenging their stance. It invites them to consider how their concerns might align with your goals. On another occasion, I discussed financial planning with a family member who strongly emphasized saving over other priorities. They said, "You're too focused on spending money for short-term benefits. What about the long term?" Instead of escalating the disagreement, I responded, "In a way, we're both looking out for the future. I think we just have different approaches to preparing for it." This simple response didn't dismiss their concerns, but reframed the discussion as a shared goal with different methods. Practical example: work conversations. Let's say a colleague criticizes your structured approach to a project, saying, "Your way is too rigid. It's slowing everything down." Instead of defending yourself, you could respond, "I see your concern. Would you agree that ensuring quality is a top priority for both of us? Maybe we can explore ways to balance structure with speed." This approach acknowledges their input while reinforcing shared priorities. Why it works. When people feel heard and understood, they are less likely to resist your perspective out of defensiveness. By showing them that your goals are aligned, you turn the conversation from a battle of opinions into a collaborative effort. Stoicism teaches that it's not about proving who's right, but about guiding the dialogue towards shared truths. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, "Whenever you are about to find fault with someone, ask yourself, what fault of mine most nearly resembles the one I am about to criticize?" By focusing on shared values rather than differences, you cultivate empathy and build connections. The Stoic approach in tense situations. When you sense opposition, here's how to respond stoically. Listen deeply. Pay attention not just to their words, but to the emotions and motivations behind them. Acknowledge their concerns, validate their perspective by showing that you understand their priorities. Highlight common goals. Use their concerns as a foundation to show how your perspectives align. Ask reflective questions. Encourage them to see the shared values or outcomes in your approach. Reframe the narrative shift, the focus from me versus you to us working together. Stoic wisdom in practice. Think about a time when someone seemed completely opposed to your ideas. How could you have uncovered the shared truths hidden beneath their resistance? For example, in a workplace discussion about budget cuts, you might hear, "We can't afford to waste money on this unnecessary project." Instead of countering with a defense, you could respond, "I hear your concern about spending wisely. Would you agree that this project could save us money in the long run if implemented effectively?" This reframing not only validates their concern, but also aligns it with your perspective, creating space for constructive dialogue. The quiet strength of alignment, Stoicism, reminds us that calmness and composure are not signs of passivity, they are signs of strength. By revealing that others may already agree with you on some level, you diffuse tension, build trust, and foster collaboration. When you align with someone's values, you show that the conversation isn't about winning, but about working together toward a shared goal. Epictetus summed it up beautifully. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. In conversations, this means focusing not on differences, but on shared truths, guiding others to see what connects you rather than what divides you. Would you like additional examples or adjustments to this section?